Hey, seated sisters. So I'm coming to you live from my room, and I'm kind of doing this on the fly. So not the normal setup. I might have some kids running in and out for a little bit, but I really wanted to have a conversation with you guys about what we studied last week in the seven feasts. So normally, we don't meet until the last Friday of the month or the fourth Friday of the month. But I wanted to take a moment and after each feast, kind of give you a little bit that you can chew on and reflect on before we move into the next one. So last week we looked at Sabbath, and I said that this was a really important thing because all of these feasts, everything that God gave them, was set and established on top of the main feast that they honored weekly, which was their Sabbath. It was a weekly routine. So hopefully, as you read through some of those verses, whichever ones you picked, or if you were able to read all of them, fantastic. You kind of got the sense that this was something that God prescribed that they were meant to uphold weekly. Now, if you go further into the prophets, you will see that multiple times God references their lack of honoring the Sabbath as a direct violation of his commandments. Now, out of all the commands he gives, all the ways that they would go and pay for their sins and all the things and ways they're supposed to treat people, he acknowledges the Sabbath repeatedly over and over. And I want to kind of emphasize this because I think sometimes in our modern society, where especially in more Protestant denominations, Sabbath is not kind of held down the way it used to be, that we can kind of breeze past that and think that maybe God was overreacting, or we can make the mistake of thinking that in Christ, the Sabbath is resolved. It's neither, guys. It's neither. Um, what I really want to emphasize here is that the importance of Sabbath is this, that God gave them 6 days to work and then he rested on the seventh himself. And he asked us to rest. And our resting basically equates to a tithe of our time. It basically turns back into a way of us saying, God, we trust you, that we've worked, we've been diligent, even if we may not have worked as productive as we thought we were. Maybe our productivity was down that week. We were sick or we had a lot going on mentally. We're saying that, God, we gave what we had to give. And at the end of the day, it's all comes from you. And so our surrender to rest is our way of showing God that we do trust him and that we understand that we are humans with limits, but that he is infinitely wise and that his timing does not require our burnout, that his progression does not require our burnout, that he's worked through broken vessels for so long. I have a little people at my feet. Um, that he's worked through broken vessels for so long that he can still do it even if we take a break. So that's kind of one of the important things that I kind of wanted to bring to our attention there. The second thing I kind of want to talk about a little bit is this idea that Jesus gives us in the Gospels. It's referenced in Mark, Matthew, and Luke that he is actually Lord of the Sabbath. And we looked at it a little bit in Luke 6, chapters 1 through 5, where he's going through the grain fields with his disciples. He plucks up some heads of grain, rubs it in their hands, and they eat it. But the Pharisees see him and they're like, why are you doing what's unlawful on the Sabbath? They're considering it work. It was unlawful to work on the Sabbath. Now, if you ever travel to Jerusalem, you will see that everything shuts down. Stores aren't open. Elevators don't work. Like the whole town screeches to a halt in honoring of the Sabbath. But excuse me, guys. Let me turn this down, buddy. There you go. But basically, in honoring of the Sabbath, I told y'all wrong wheel today. I have little man David at my feet. But um, basically, what he was saying was that, and if you go to Jerusalem at a time, everything halts. And so they were saying, if your disciples bowed you, it was the disciples that did it. Rabbis were responsible for their disciples. Hey, if your disciples did it, you're basically signing off on them working. And this is how we've caught you. This is how we know that you aren't really a religious leader. Because if you were, you would know that we don't do this. But he was bringing their attention back to the fact that they had done what they've always done, add these additional rules and regulations and exalted them over God's original plan. And when that happened, what resulted was actually this burden to doing a bunch of things. We don't just see it here. We also see it where the man comes with the withered hand and they don't want to heal him because they believe that if it wasn't life threatening, you didn't do it that way. And forget the fact that the law, the same law that God wrote about the Sabbath, actually gives them space to, I'm trying to get that sound away, guys. I don't know if you're ADHD like me, you're struggling with the fact that he has this loud toy on in the background. And I've tried to turn it off, but unless we want crying, that may not work. Let's try it again. Okay, come here, Bubby. Sit with me.
Becky.
Yay, say hi, everybody. Okay, you gonna stay with me for the teaching and be quiet?
Quiet.
Okay. Okay, so I didn't want to wait any longer to get this to you guys, but I knew it would take a little bit. Hold on, when I'm done, we can talk, okay? Okay? Okay. So basically, I wanted to kind of emphasize that they were saying that this is work. Now, forget that same command that God gave for. Okay, I'm gonna have to put you out, buddy. I'm gonna have to put you out. Anyway, what I was saying was that same law actually provided that people who were poor and didn't have anything to eat were allowed to walk through those fields and gather and able to actually just eat. That was a law. But they're saying, oh, because you did this on the Sabbath, this isn't allowed. This is not something you can do. This is how we know. And he's like, look, the Sabbath was created so you guys would know the rest, basically, so you would know your limits. But I'm Lord of the Sabbath. And he's basically saying that I have the ability to show. And he uses the example in other gospels, especially in Mark, that even David ate from the showbread. And he wasn't allowed to eat from that because he wasn't a priest, but he still ate from it. And y'all still laud him as a hero. He's like, but I literally am God walking among you. And I'm telling you that this was not meant to put an undue burden on my people. It was meant to help them rest better. And that's the point of him making that observation. I don't know if you've ever struggled with that whole Lord of the Sabbath thing, but he was basically saying, do not take what I gave you as a gift and make it a noose. Do not keep the people from meeting with me and resting their bodies. But because if there's something you do, he's like, basically, y'all as priests do stuff. If somebody needs to be circumcised on the 8th day and the 8th day falls on the Sabbath, you'll do it. If there's a life treatment, if the incense needs to go up, if there are certain things that keep the house that need to happen, you do those things. So obviously, that's not the point. That's not the point. And so I think what we really need to understand, guys, I feel like I'm gonna have to record this all over because it's just a mess. Okay. But what I really wanted to emphasize here is that I don't want us to get caught up with the fact that your Sabbath has to be on a certain day or that your Sabbath has to happen at a certain time of day. The point is that you find a 24-hour period. David, I need you to stop. Okay, I need you to go. If I understand what you want, but I need you to wait. What I wanted you guys to understand is that God is asking us to find a 24-hour period where we pause from activity. Are we still going to need to feed our families and eat? Yes. Can we maybe sometimes prepare a meal beforehand so we can eat and not have to work so much? Yes. But I also want to tell you that God is so good and so good to us that he is completely okay with us moving that weekly if we need to. My husband's schedule has changed. And so for a season and time in our life where we didn't have a regular rhythm, that day changed from week to week. The importance was I am finding space in my schedule to pause, to give God this space and to say that I am not going to put my hands to work because I trust that the little that I give him is enough for him to do whatever he wants to do, that he is not asking for us to burn ourselves out on his altar when he's already provided a willing sacrifice in his son. So when you go through the rest of these feasts and you look at that, I want you to keep in mind that Jesus has already fulfilled the fullness of the law. He's fulfilled it, but it doesn't mean that it takes away its wisdom. It doesn't mean that it takes away what is necessary or what is still edifying to our bodies. No, we are not expected to sacrifice all these rams and stuff because we've had the ultimate sacrifice. And that may also go for the fact that he is Lord of the Sabbath. He can extend what we are allowed to do, but may we also not get away from the fact that him in his grace has also given us this Sabbath as a way to rest and rely in who he is. And he modeled it. God didn't need the rest. God doesn't sleep or slumber, yet he still modeled that rest for us so that we would take it. So I just kind of wanted to give you guys that before we move on to the next one, which is Passover. And I want to encourage you as you read through these, look for Christ in it. Where do you see something that points you to who God is and how he may be represented in these feasts? Because all of them foreshadow something in the Son. So as we continue to read, I hope you guys will dive into that. And so thank you for hanging in there with me while I had a couple of little distractions and breaks, pleasant ones, but I'm trying to still show up even though life is a little bit crazy right now. But I love you guys. And I'm excited to see what God is doing and what He has shown you as we study through this together. So I will see you at our next Zoom meeting and our next little online chat here. Love you guys so much. Bye.